Trains are stopped in Crimea. Military convoys cannot pass through Kerch. The bridge is not being dismantled, but the arteries are suddenly spasming. Trucks, wagons and tankers are being held up. Panic is everywhere. People are in dire straits because the ammunition supply for the army protecting them has been cut off. Explosives and fuel destined for Crimea are stuck at stations on the Russian mainland. People are looking on with concern because the next alarm could completely close the Kerch bridge. And both Russian residents and the Russian army in Crimea are aware of this. So, is it necessary to destroy a bridge to take it out of the game? You don't necessarily have to destroy a bridge to take it out of the game. The inability of Russian trains to pass through to Crimea safely, the ban on dangerous cargo, lanes closing for minutes at every alarm, and a single underwater explosion keeping engineers chained to their desks for months. All of this explains how Ukraine paralyzed the Kerch bridge in just 3 strikes. According to Vasyl Malyuk, head of the Ukrainian security service, the Kerch bridge is currently operating at limited capacity. In particular, vehicles weighing over 5 tons are not permitted to cross. In other words, the bridge is unusable for military logistics. The bridge had become a security burden for Moscow. Defense elements connecting air to land and sea to shore were locking in personnel and firepower needed on other fronts via the Kerch Strait. Civilian sector steps also underscored this assessment. The gradual shift of heavy truck and fuel traffic to ferries revealed the fragility behind the official narrative. Is the word open always reliable in military parlance? On the ground, day by day, even hour by hour, alarm closures became the new normal. Closures lasting a few hours took a toll on drivers' nerves more than the bridge's concrete. When a bridge closes twice in a row, the convoy commander changes his plan, not his schedule. At this point, the language of engineering comes into play. Every impact affecting the support structure triggers a reassessment of static and fatigue calculations. This means additional inspections for heavy hazardous loads, reduced speed limits, and new checks after every tremor. There is no destruction, but there is an uncertainty eroding the safety margin. In other words, it is not a part of the bridge that is damaged, but its functionality. Would a military train cross that bridge without an engineer's signature? By spring 2024, the picture became clear. Due to hazardous cargo restrictions, over 2,000 tanker cars were stranded on the North Caucasus Railway for weeks. The solution was to increase ferry and tanker shipments. The message on the table was clear. The everything goes through the bridge era was over. Ukrainian SBU head Vasyl Malyuk stated in March 2024 that the bridge was not actually being used to transport ammunition, with the daily number of trains dropping to 4-5, primarily carrying passengers. During the same period, the OSINT community Molfar reported that they had not observed any freight trains carrying military equipment in satellite images. While some of these claims were dismissed as propaganda by opposing media, the behavior on the ground spoke volumes on its own. So where is Russia's logistics breathing from? The answer becomes clear when following the map along the southern coastal strip. The lines stretching from Taganrog to Mariupol and from Berdyansk to Melitopol were rapidly put into operation throughout 2024-2025. In some areas, complete reconstruction was carried out, while in others, improvements were made. However, these alternative routes closer to and more exposed to Ukrainian fire. In other words, every gain is balanced by another risk. The strategy of reducing dependence on Kerch looks smart on paper, but in practice, it comes with a high insurance premium. Around the strait, barge and boom barriers, smokescreen devices, and close patrol lines have been reinforced to counter surface and underwater threats. The attacks came again. These defenses make it harder to approach, but they don't eliminate the risk. The main effect is to increase the number of guards at the gate and slow down every passage. When you look at the economic side of the map, the word closure actually means loss. When a convoy waits in Kerch, the alternative railway line is not just a line on a map, but a cost curve. Fuel, shifts, spare parts, camouflage, escorts, fatigue. Every hour spent waiting at the dock for fuel transferred to ferries and tankers translates into delays elsewhere in the war. The lanes that open and close with every alarm create an artery that seems to exist and not exist at the same time. At this point, the strategy boils down to this question. Is it cheaper to keep the bridge open or to build a new logistics infrastructure without considering the cost? For a moment, we step onto the bridge. Concrete, steel, and cables. But the war is not about the material, it's about the system. When an underwater explosion raises suspicions about structural integrity, parameters such as hazardous materials, speed, and axle pressure are recalibrated on the railway side. On the road, heavy trucks and fuel tankers are either restricted to specific time windows or redirected entirely to the sea. A bridge that appears open on paper is downgraded to high-risk variable status in planning software. This does not mean you have lost the bridge. It means you have lost predictable capacity. Is ammunition transported according to a schedule or according to tactics? This is precisely where political rhetoric lags behind. Official bulletins quickly circulate the phrase, "Traffic has been reopened," while kilometer-long queues in the summer heat are dismissed as delays. In the language of the commander on the ground, the picture is stark. Turn dangerous cargo back to the ferry, divert military trains to the southern land corridor, and stop and start at every alarm. This is what the British call the security burden. The batteries, radars, and crews deployed to keep a bridge open mean reduced defense at another critical point. Every button that lights up in the control tower means another one goes out on another front. How many batteries are needed to protect a bridge? Let's consider the first 6 hours of a crisis. When the high threat alarm sounds over the strait, heavy vehicle traffic and dangerous cargo come to an immediate halt. Passengers and light vehicles move intermittently at a slow pace. The emergency share from Crimea's internal depots is activated. Ferry terminals become congested, and the tanker schedule is expanded. In the following hours, the southern land corridor increases its role as a substitute. But those routes also mean more surveillance, more escorts, and more stop-and-go traffic. By the 24-hour mark, the flow of ammunition and fuel to the front lines becomes unpredictable. The tactical tempo slows, and fire intensity shifts from hourly plans to daily plans. This scenario is not played out once, but repeatedly with each alarm. A voice of objection will rise. But the bridge is still there. Vehicles are passing. Can't you see? Yes, the bridge is still there in the photo. Yes, civilian traffic continues most days, but the issue is not how many vehicles passed, but what cargo, at what speed, and with what security margin. Restrictions on hazardous cargo, such as fuel and ammunition, the reduction of military trains, the prioritization of passenger-focused traffic. Each of these may seem small individually, but together they paint a larger picture. Functional loss has occurred without destruction. This is not a hit-and-forget strategy. It is a hit-and-slow-down strategy. Returning to the psychology on the ground, the Kerch Bridge was portrayed as one of Putin's personal symbolic projects. Therefore, every alarm is not just a disruption of a route, but also of a narrative. The legitimacy narrative built around the connection between Crimea and the Russian mainland stumbles with every logistical setback. But Moscow is taking countermeasures, expanding the southern land corridor,